Greetings, my excellent friend.
Welcome to Most Excellent Adventure to
Heavy Metal
History Report.
Born in Long Island, why?
Long Island, oh shit, this is rich. Long Island, the famous breeding ground for blues beer.
Yeah, the spirit took me, and his whole broken body left up and danced. I said now, all my heroes in a bundle at my back. How come I, rolling, spinning my shadow, then over the cap? Yeah, you know what they say. Always need something to look up to. Said I got what I need. Said I got those sunny trees. Yeah, I got the sweet sound and it's gonna set me free. Yeah, mother, I wanna be like the mountains, like the sea. Yeah, tell the newsman got his story. Couple young men, and they hungry.
So I guess what I'm gonna do, man, is I'm gonna let you introduce yourself. That's how I like to do it, and then I'll kind of go from there.
Cool.
All right, ready whenever you are, man.
All right. Hey, this is Nick Lee from Moontooth and Riot 5.
Yes. Yeah, man, I'm actually I'm stoked to get to talk to you about that too. I had no idea until you mentioned it, and I was like, oh man, it's gonna be perfect for the history episodes.
Yeah, I figured, they have plenty of history, so.
So the thing that I kind of like to start with to get the ball rolling here is kind of where your origins start as far as like getting into heavy metal in some way or another. What were like the first records you found, the first bands you found, and how did that like evolve to where you are right now?
For me, like my dad is a metalhead. He was into Sabbath and Motorhead and Metallica, and like Scorpions and all like old school stuff like that. Michael Schenker, and he kind of turned me on to all that stuff when I was young. I remember my first memory of liking anything was like Metallica when I was 6 years old and hearing Enter Sandman on the radio at like a family party or something. That kind of began the obsession with metal and guitar and wanting to play guitar and be in bands and stuff. So that was like my initial kind of spark was hearing that song and asking my parents like, what is this, And then I had like uncles who played in cover bands, and so like I would see their bands as a kid, and I was always like fascinated with guitars and just rock music in general. I mean, my family played other stuff in the house, but my first thing that was really obsessed with was like Metallica and Sabbath, and that became Slayer and Pantera, and then it went on from there.
Yeah, I think that's one thing Metallica doesn't get like enough credit for, especially with the Black Album, is how accessible it is to a lot of people as far as like getting them into metal, and whether they like take that and run with it to like a more extreme side or maybe even stay around like where Metallica's at now. I think that's a good thing, and it I think people definitely overlook that fact.
Oh yeah, I mean I would never have dug so deep as to getting into like grind and doom and all that stuff, if I hadn't had that initial spark of being interested in like Metallica as a kid, and just the fact that it was playing, on the radio, at a family barbecue or something, it wasn't like someone was like showing it to me. It was just, it was all over the place. And then people, kids could hear it at a Yankees game, and then go home and like, go on the internet and find out, just how much there is to know about metal, you know. So it's like, you know, I think that they're a lot of people's, you know, first like entryway band into metal. You know, I think for me it was also like AC/DC. I had mentioned before. You know, you hear that stuff on the radio, and as a kid you think like, wow, what is this? You know, and then you get so used to it that you don't think twice about it anymore when you hear those songs on the radio. But those are the bands that kind of broke that boundary. You know, they bring all the new people in. I mean, the Black Album still like sells better than like most metal releases. I think if not all of them, you know, it's still like one of the best selling albums every month or every year, all over the world, you know.
Yeah, I think I remember reading that fairly recently that it still sells like 10,000 copies a day or something crazy like that, and I was just like, man,
crazy. Yeah, it's still one of the biggest things that's ever happened to the genre. So, and you know, I mean, I heard it, you know, when I was a little kid, so I didn't really approach it with the standpoint of like, oh, it's too mainstream, it's too commercial. Like I didn't know any better, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Then I got into all the old stuff, and then you know you kind of realize why people had a problem with it. But you know, for me, it's just kind of defined like my initial, my earliest memories of loving music, you know.
Yeah, I feel like everybody kind of starts off with like a Metallica level band. I'd be surprised if I ever talked to somebody and they're like, oh yeah, you know, Napalm Death was like my first band.
Yeah.
I'd be like, what? No way.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it ultimately led to that for me, you know, and then by the time I was 14, 15, I was looking more towards things like that. You know, you did the thing where you're like, okay, you know, what else is there and how heavy does it get and how fast and crazy and brutal does it get, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of one of the great things that, you know, I love about the genre, and like I think a lot of people kind of outside of the genre don't really realize is how much of an array of sounds there are within metal itself. And it could be something, you know, even that has singing in it, but still has like that aggression in the guitar, or, you know, you can have the most like ridiculous, brutal death metal band out there that probably doesn't even have vocals, or like lyrics. They're just like making guttural noises. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, you know, it's worth digging through all of it. I think, you know, that's kind of what I spent my, you know, high school years doing, and then, you know, a little bit older too. And then I kind of took a step back, I guess, in the last, you know, 5 to 10 years, and kind of looked, you know, tried to think of what more I was looking for out of music and out of songs. You know, I'm more of a more into like songs than flashiness, you know, like virtuoso playing. I've always been looking more for like the content of the song or the riffs, you know, like what the hooks of it, you know, like what brings you back to certain recordings, certain songs.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, for a long time it was like, you know, what's the gnarliest death metal song I can find, or what's the most grimy, like doomy stoner song I can find. You know, you just kind of look for the extremes, you know, and then you know, there's still bands that have all that stuff that I love, and then there's a bunch that kind of like, you know, you never go back to, but you know, you just, that's the exciting thing about music, is just the exploration, you know. And I like looking backwards, like finding things, you know, like a modern band, and then you just kind of trace the steps backwards to find where it came from. I think that's like the most interesting thing about heavy music, is like, who was the first band to do this or that, or like, you know, finding like some band from the like late 60s or early 70s that you never heard of, that like has really heavy riffs that like just kind of went under the radar. Like that stuff's really fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's kind of like my whole goal with this podcast too, is to kind of dissect and figure out like where everything started and how it branched out from there. And it's been really interesting because I found a lot of bands that I didn't really know about or give credit to with certain things, and you know, I go back and listen to it and I'm like, whoa, okay, so Black Sabbath is actually responsible for writing the first thrash metal riff that I've ever heard, and then it just like blew up after that.
Yeah, sure. And then you can even trace it back further, you know, like if you look back at the Beatles, and then, you know, even like pre-Beatles rock music, and then back to blues, and it's really fascinating. I mean, and actually even speaking about Metallica, like they did that whole garage thing when I got older, I looked back and I found Budgie and Diamond Head and Merciful Fate, and I actually like found all these records and was able to like, you know, have a kind of a way to find these things. You know, now I guess this is still pre-internet, you know,
Yeah.
but like at least the way we know it now, you know. But it gave me like an idea of like, all right, so this is what these guys loved, and you know, and this is why they sound the way they do, you know. So let me go listen to those records and see, you know, how they make me feel and what they inspire me to do, you know. So they just became more and more interested in like the past, you know. So definitely a lot of good gems, you know. A friend of mine, I was just toured Europe with Riot 5, and a friend of mine turned me on to all these Australian bands like Rose Tattoo, Colored Balls. There's all these like cool like hard rock bands that were like pre-AC/DC that AC/DC like kind of not like ripped off, but like was influenced by, like Rose Tattoo, that sound really fucking cool and really heavy and like very rock and roll, like good songs. But like I totally went under my radar, you know. I'm almost 30 years old, and he's like, "You ever heard of this band? You ever heard of this band?" And they were all these like 70s Australian bands. So, and he sent me a bunch of the stuff, and it all rocks. It's all really cool.
Yeah,
you never like stop learning, you know.
Yeah, that's one of the great things, man. I'm always like finding something new or something old that is new to me, personally. And to your point with like, not necessarily Australian bands, but like bands from other countries that were around in the 70s that aren't necessarily metal, but like have that style. I think one of my favorites that I always like point to is Thin Lizzy. Man, that band. Yeah. Just the harmonic leads that they have like in their later records there are just some of my favorite things to listen to.
Totally. Yeah, I listened to a lot of that on the last tour I did with Riot when we were out with Primal Fear. There was always like Thin Lizzy on the bus afterwards. And
nice.
Moontooth actually covered Jailbreak for years, which was fun. But yeah, I mean that album and the song was it Don't Say a Word? That song is really fucking cool.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, I mean, there's just tons of like, for like a band like that, like the riffs and the harmonies and all that stuff are great, but like the songs are great. Like every song kind of stands alone and has a good story and good melodies and good chord progressions, you know. And then the riffs just kind of like the cherry on top with a lot of that, in my opinion. You know, that's kind of what I've been fascinated with and what I've been trying to do with Moontooth is like try to write timeless songs, you know, and then let all the technicality and, you know, the playing be kind of like the, you know, just it's still there and it's still like important, but like really when you could play it on an acoustic guitar and it will still kind of still sound good and still be heavy and still be, you know, you could sing along to it. So that's kind of where we've been in our writing, you know, in the last couple years.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely something I want to get to in here in a second, because I've been really interested of like where you guys have like kind of progressed from, you know, 2016 to now. But I guess kind of before that, like how did you get into playing guitar? Like, was it family that kind of urged you into it, or did you know somebody that kind of like inspired you, or seeing guys in bands inspire you? Like, how did that kind of spark get lit?
Yeah, I mean, I started playing guitar at the same time, like 6-7 years old. So it was like my uncles who played in cover bands, and, you know, I used to see them at parties and stuff, and with you know, going to parties and like bars and stuff. Like when I was a little kid with my family, like they would, you know, they'd always be playing and they'd do, you know, Hendrix and whatever, classic rock, Creedence, Allman Brothers, stuff like that. So that was my first, you know, like seeing a person play guitar in person, you know, while I was there live in front of them, watching them. And then, you know, my family was just always playing music. So as soon as I expressed any interest in guitar, they got me a guitar, you know. So, and then my first teacher that I was stuck with for a long time was his name is Mike Flint, and he is the other guitar player in Riot. So that's how I ended up in Riot.
Okay.
So he joined Riot in 1989 to play like the second guitar parts when they started the power metal era, like the Thundersteel era of that band, and he's been in the band ever since. So like 30 years now. But yeah, I started taking lessons with him around 8 years old, and I stuck with him until I was 18. So he was probably my first and major like influence as far as like someone in my life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I really didn't need a lot of pushing as far as like, like he helped push me to like practice what scales and arpeggios and learn how to read music and learn how to learn music theory and all that stuff. But like I always kind of loved just playing and writing, so I didn't as soon as I had a guitar I was trying to write songs and riffs and stuff. But yeah, I mean I don't even really remember. I was a little kid, but that's who really got me started. It was like my family, and then taking lessons with Mike for 10 years.
So having like all that support around you, do you think it would have been different for you if you didn't have anybody that was like, oh, why are you going to play guitar? Why are you going to be, like a musician? Like, that's dumb. Do you think that would have like hindered you wanting to play at all? I know it's kind of, like a what if question, but I've always kind of been fascinated with that kind of aspect of like the support versus non-support with musicians,
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I obviously, who knows really, but I think that I would have still done it. I think it's just the matter of like, my mom drove me to guitar lessons once a week, for my whole childhood basically.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't have that, I wouldn't be the same player that I am. I don't know if it would be better or worse necessarily, but I imagine I wouldn't know as much growing up, so I would have had to been on my own more. So
yeah.
Whatever that would have meant. I mean, I have, friends in my life or people I've played in bands with whose family don't support them as much as mine does, or don't at all really.
Mm-hmm.
And, they still do it, because I think there's definitely, you just kind of get that bug as a kid, like whatever it is, like you see some music video or just see some band live or something, and I think you just catch that sickness, where you're like, I want to do that. And you probably can get it with anything really, whatever you're passionate about. But
yeah, it's true.
I think I would have still done it. I just don't think it would have been as easy, at least as far as learning. It's never been easy, but as far as like just having the support of like, being brought a guitar, being brought to guitar lessons once a week, that made it easier. I never really thought twice about it. I remember like, when you're in like fourth grade and you're supposed to pick an instrument, my mom was like, you already play guitar, you're not getting an instrument, so, I think it's just her just keep me focused on, be good at this thing, you chose this thing, like just focus on this, if I was playing Sega for too long, I would get in trouble, I would get yelled at, but practice your guitar, so I think in that level of support, helped me to become, a professional player, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it. But without it, I still would have played. I still would have tried anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good though, like having that like support system around you to foster that creativity, because I think a lot of people take that for granted sometimes, especially artists in general. It can be a very misunderstood kind of like calling, I think, especially with like musicians. Yeah. People don't understand it. It's like, oh, you're going to go travel around the world and just play on a stage. Like, it's not a real job, Yeah. But it is to an extent.
My family was into it, but I definitely grew up in a community, like I grew up in Long Island, just like the suburbs, and, being a musician, like really into music, you're already like on a, kind of a weirdo, and then you're into like heavy metal, and then you're like now you're in a very small group of people, at least in where I grew up. So, the support, it wasn't like I'm, fighting adversity,
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was still like, looked down as like, well, that's a nice hobby, like, what are you going to go to college for? What's your, your backup plan?
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't ever, wasn't ever really taken seriously as like a career. I mean, maybe for good reason, but, I always kind of look at it as like, well, this is what I'm going to do. This isn't really like, there's no other option really, so that was always like an irritating thing to grow up with, was kind of this feeling that like, it's not taken seriously. Like it's, you're supported, like, yeah, go do it. But like, don't think you're going to do this for the rest of your life. That kind of feeling. I'm sure a lot of people deal with that, especially in the beginning when they're starting bands. And it wasn't until like I went to Europe for the first time with Riot that like, it kind of stops becoming a conversation of like, you know, what else are you going to do? You know,
Yeah.
it took that much to like for it to be taken seriously to some people, I think.
Well, I mean, you know, you obviously had a passion to keep going with it, with or without the support, and you know, how did you eventually come to that decision of like, okay, I want to make my own band now? And like, what were kind of like your first forays into writing music and making bands like?
I mean, I like pretty much as soon as I started playing, that's what I wanted to do. I mean, that's kind of what, it was never like I wanted to play guitar just to be a guitar player. Like I wanted to be in a band. I think at some point, like seeing videos of probably Metallica, you know, just thinking of like, you know, I want to do that, you know, like the songs are powerful, and the lyrics to me, especially as a young kid, were like very like personal and vulnerable looking back on it. Like, you know, especially when, you know, the lyrics are more like inward, you know, like an inward analysis and, you know, analyzing things like depression and suicide and things like that, and added to this very heavy sounding music. And then just the idea of like, you know, you see, you know, footage of bands like having a good time, and you just think like, well, I can do something with meaning, and I can do it with my best friends, and I don't have a boss, you know, like it was always about that. So, I mean, even as a kid, I had a cousin that played drums, and I would have like whatever goofy riff I wrote, and I would make him play it with me. And, you know, we'd always have like bands that we were making up, like, you know, all right, you play keyboard and you play bass. And, you know, actually my first band, and I guess I could say my first real band, was with Ray, who plays drums in Moontooth. And we were like 13, and we didn't have a bass player, so like I made my neighbor buy a bass. You know, I'm like, okay, you're the bass player now. You know, so and you know, he didn't know how to play bass, and we were just like, whatever, it's bass, just hit the bottom string, you know. And it sounded terrible, but it was like I was so obsessed with it pretty much my whole life.
So what was your early kind of like songwriting like? What would you compare it to, I guess, for music around that time?
I don't know. I mean, there wasn't really no like songwriting. It was just kind of like, I have a riff, and then here's another riff, and then here's another riff. Okay, it's a song, you know, just play each one 4 times. You know, in middle school, I was really obsessed with Slipknot and like some of the new metal stuff. I mean, that was like the other obsession, you know. I was 13. I was really into those bands, and like, you know, tuning all my guitars down to B and trying to write in that style, you know. And I was really into Slayer and Sepultura and, you know, any thrash metal stuff I could find. So, you know, it was just trying to write brutal riffs. You know, it wasn't really like, it wasn't a lot of thought behind it.
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the way, I got into more of like groovier stuff, like Pantera, and just trying to write more like, being able to write like more bluesy influence, like southerny kind of like groove riffs. And it just kind of like kept like morphing, you know, out of, it was always just about like write a riff, you know, and then, okay, you know, okay, so that's the verse, now write a riff, okay, that's the chorus, you know. And then even if it doesn't sound anything like a chorus, it's like you just call it the chorus, and you just kind of like make your singer figure it out. That's kind of like where it used to be. And then, you know, as I've gotten older, I've tried to write more with lyrics in mind. And but yeah, in the beginning, there was no system. It was kind of just like, you're too young to really, you know, it's very innocent, you know. You just kind of like, this kind of, you know, you're ripping people off, you know. I mean, I can hear like old riffs and go, okay, I ripped that off of this Slayer riff, or this, you know, Slipknot riff, or this like Pantera riff. Like, I can obviously hear where I went, like, okay, I'll just change a couple of the notes, or I'll change the rhythm slightly. Okay, now it's mine. You know, it wasn't like, obviously when you're 13, you're not doing it thinking you're getting away with something. You just, that's just how you write.
Yeah, guilty. I used to do that too a lot when I was like first learning how to play guitar. It's like, oh, I should take this riff and put it into this kind of riff, but change like these notes. It's just like, oh wait, but it still sounds like that song, you know, if you really like listen to it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so naive, but so
you're
wholesome at the same
experimenting,
time.
You're learning what the guitar can do. So you're just like making shit up as you go. And, you know, I wish I could kind of, you know, since I've been playing music with our drummer Ray for so long, like we laugh about like, now we're so analytical about every little moment in a part, and it makes it kind of like hard to move forward sometimes on something, you know. Whereas when you're 13, 14, 15, you're like, okay, here's the riff. Oh, sick. Play it 4 times. All right, here's another riff. Play it 4 times. Play another riff for like 2 times. Okay, now start the whole thing over. You know, it's like you don't really care. It's like you're just excited to be doing it, you know. You're excited to be able to finish a song with your friends, you know. But we were like really young. He was really into recording music really young too, and by the time we were like 15, 16, we were like doing demos and then doing like EPs and albums and stuff. So like it was kind of always part of my life, you know.
And so Moon Tooth kind of formed around like 2012, right?
Yeah, we that's when we first got together and we played our first show in December, like the very end of 2012.
Okay. So how did everybody kind of like join forces and, you know, get together and decide to make this band?
So yeah, me and Ray, our drummer, were friends since we were 13. You know, we met on the first day of 7th grade because we both had Metallica t-shirts on. And he played drums, and so we were like immediately friends. And we had a couple bands with other friends that we knew at the time. And then by the time we were around 15, 16, it ended up as this band. It was called Exemption.
Mm-hmm.
And we had put out like one album when we were 18, and then like an EP a couple years later. And then when we were 21, we put out an album called Public Cemetery Party, which did okay. You know, like it got good reviews, and we started to kind of get some buzz going. But then our singer bass player decided he wasn't really into the style anymore, and he wanted to move on. So we played our last show in the beginning of 2012, and then like we already knew he was going to leave, so we had like some songs ready to go. So once that was over, we found our singer John, who was actually playing drums with me in another band called Rice Cultivation Society was the name of the band.
Okay.
He was playing drums, but I knew he could sing because he had put out his own EP. And he had showed it to me like a long time ago, and he was singing on it, and he had all these harmonies laid on it, and it was really beautiful, and not metal. It was more like, I don't know, indie, kind of ethereal, indie, just weird, experimental music. So I knew he could sing, and he immediately stepped up and was like, I want to be the singer, because he was a big fan of me and Ray's other band, and like kind of he came right to us, like, I know this, I'm the guy for the job for this. And you know, the way me and Ray were at, like, it's like, well, we know he can sing his ass off, and like we really wanted to just go. Like, we didn't want to lose a lot of time from the other band breaking up. And then our bass player Vin, he's just like our friend for many years. He was playing in a band called Painted in Exile for a minute, and he played in a couple other bands. But like, really, he was just close to us, and I knew he was a really solid person.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of the main thing. Was I really wanted to work with people that I knew would stick around, and I knew were really down for the cause. You know, like I didn't want to get somebody just because they were like a hot shot, you know, musician, but was already in 10 other bands and was maybe going to push back when, you know, we tried to be like, all right, you got to take off work for 2.5 weeks, you know, make no money and go on the road with us, you know. So there was like immediately like I kind of knew it should be those guys, you know, like. Mm-hmm. And actually they met at our first rehearsal, so they didn't know each other at all. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. Like we just like really wanted to hit the ground running. Like there was no like from the beginning of the band there was no like taking it easy, you know. We kind of just showed up. I was like, all right, here's 4 songs. Let's learn these 4 songs. And I have some other riffs, and like we pretty much immediately played music together. Like it's first rehearsal, you know. And yeah, and then we put out the Freaks EP in 2013, and we played a shitload of shows. We basically played 100 shows in our first year, and we basically just played any stupid thing we could play, like any shitty show anywhere, like in the surrounding states to New York, like pretty much any stage that we were allowed on, we'd play. Some of them were super shot, and some of them were good, but we just kind of like my mission from the beginning was like, let's play like as many shows as possible, and that will make us a tight band, you know, rather than like be behind the scenes and like recording and building an online presence. Like let's try to do all that stuff, but like let's just play as much as possible, because that's what's going to make us, you know, solid, and that's what's going to make people talk about us. Is not the fact that like, you know, we have a cool recording online and like a cool music video. It's going to be the fact that they've seen us live and hung out with us, and you know, see that we play constantly, and just be the real deal, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's an excellent
book, and he,
go ahead.
No, I read Lemmy's autobiography, and one of my favorite things in it was when he said that, like, you know, you're not a band unless you're working, and you're not working unless you're playing shows. And I really believe that, you know, and I understand that not everyone subscribes to that, you know, ethos, which is fine, but I really identify with that, you know. I don't really want to be anything other than like a working band, you know.
It's kind of funny you took that word right out of my mouth, because I was going to say that's an excellent ethos to have, is to constantly want to be putting yourself out there as a band and playing any show, no matter what, anywhere, anytime, and eating crow, you know, some nights, and still just being like, yeah, I want to do this. This is fun. This is what I am here to do. And really just getting ears on the music too.
Exactly. And I think people they'll take you more seriously when they see you in person and see how you carry yourself. And, you know, we pride ourselves in being, you know, just like we're very respectful of the people that we play with, and, you know, the people that we work with, you know, the people that work for the venues and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I definitely believe like your reputation kind of, you know, carries you, or it'll crumble you, you know, and you know, we made the most lasting relationships that helped us later when people started really giving a shit, you know, that we made those relationships in the first few years playing a ton of shows. You know, it wasn't like I emailed somebody and they gave us a good review. It was kind of like from really meeting the people at shows and getting like an organic word of mouth thing happening. But yeah, I mean, so we just grinded it out, and that's, you know, it took us longer to get an album out because we were doing that, because we were trying to tour and trying to never say no to anything. Now we're a little bit more, I mean, we're a lot more strategic about it now, but at the time it was like, whatever, we'll play, you know, in New York City on Friday, and then we'll play Long Island on Saturday, and then we'll play upstate on Sunday, whatever, you know, and just kept doing that for as long as possible. And, you know, eventually it paid off, you know.
Yeah, I would have to think, you know, just the growth of musicianship over that amount of time would have had to have been like exponential, because you're just constantly like sharpening your iron, and, you know, I'm sure like your creative peak was like always on point too, I would assume, unless, you know, like maybe it, like, you know, you got burnt out from playing a couple too many shows at a certain point in time. But it seems like you guys kind of had an idea in mind and just like ran with it and knew what you were going to do from the get-go.
Yeah, like you said, it's you know, it was to really sharpen our ability to play with each other, and, you know, and play live, because you can play the thing in the practice room 100 times in a row, and it still won't feel the same when you get on stage. It's going to feel totally different. It's like a total different skill set. You know, you're playing, you know, you're working against your adrenaline, you're working against adversity in whatever sound at the venue or stage setup, or you know, you had to use some gear that you're not used to or something like that. You know, all that stuff is a skill in and of itself. And you can't, that was the thing also, is like me and Ray, our drummer, had 10 years of chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were kids, but still, we were playing together for that long. You don't just create that. You know, that has to come from time. It has to come from years of grinding together. You know, you don't just kind of like, I mean, you can have natural chemistry with somebody, but, you know, as far as playing music together, like, it's only going to get better the more you do it, you know, as long as you don't hate each other.
Yeah.
But like, it can really only get better the more you play. And so that's what I would always kind of justify, you know, playing a show to 2 or 3 people or 0 people. It was just like, this is just making us better and building character for the band. And that was important, you know, more important really than immediate success, you know.
Yeah, what were some of those shows in those early days that stick out to you that were just like, oh man, this is really bad. Did we make the wrong decision here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it wasn't really like a eventful show. I remember we went out to Pennsylvania, a town called Doylestown, and played this record store. And so me and Ray's old band was really good friends with this awesome band from Philly called Carved Up. And there was another one called Plutonian, and a few others. And we went out to play with them. And it was kind of like our first mini tour thing. And our van had totally broken down.
Oh,
we were
man.
taking our bassist's car, and then so we were bringing a lot less gear. And then I showed up, and like we're playing the gig, and my amp, it's just like, I don't even know what the fuck was going on with it, but it was just like losing volume every song. And rather than just like accept that it was broken and try to get someone else to bring something up, I just dealt with it, and I could just tell that nobody could hear me, and everybody was looking at us like, what the fuck is this? That was just one of the shows. And there are plenty like that, but where gear would fail or something would just, there's still shows like that, that
Yeah.
there are definitely plenty of shows like where there's been plenty of shows where I've just been like, this fucking sucks. Like nobody's understanding what we're going for, and this sounds shit. And what am I going to do? But I never really, honestly, I've never walked on with any of them being like, I don't want to do this anymore. It makes me more eager to just get back up and do it again, because or just come back to, especially when you're out of town, it sucks because if you have a bad show when you're home, at least you can get another one and get your friends out again. But when you're on the road and you kind of feel like you only got like one shot to impress these people, you're opening up for another band that they love and they don't know you from a hole in the wall, and then you have a bad set, that really hurts, because you're like, who the fuck knows when the next time I'm going to be back in like Mesa, Arizona is going to be.
Yeah.
But just part of it. A lot of heartbreak and frustration and anger that goes with all the good stuff too.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I've definitely been around a lot of that myself too. And the first tour I did with the band, our trailer like just shit the bed completely, and like
Yep.
we're just like, okay, we're not going to do this tour anymore. Like we're just done. And we had like a bunch of dates left, and we just decided to pack it up and go home. And it was just like, well, could just play the shows and deal with it being shitty or borrowing equipment, but it was just kind of like, nah, we're giving up. It's done. But yeah, it's a hard thing to kind of like want to push forward or like, play to two people. But you learn from that, man. That's the important part, I think.
Yeah, it's just, you just roll with the punches. You got to be resilient. When we were out with Inshot, which was like our first big tour, our van, our whole transmission went, and we had to rebuild it on the road. It cost us like the entire, more than what we made on the tour.
Oh,
and God. While we missed one show because of it, but while it was happening, I was like, I don't give a fuck. We're finishing this tour. I don't give a shit if I have to go home and get my Hyundai and just like pick up the guys and finish the tour.
That
but
I have a similar story there for you. One of the bands that was on a tour package with us, that happened to them. Their transmission gave out, and they had to leave their van in like whatever city, I forget what city it was, and they rented a U-Haul, and they all had to travel in the back of the U-Haul while one person drove up front with all the gear, and they were all in the back with the gear. And just like, it was the middle of summer in like 2008, and just every day when we'd pull up that U-Haul, they were just like, I'm surprised they didn't die of like heat stroke or something like that. It was brutal.
Yeah.
Just seeing them like suffer
that's
through
illegal.
that.
That's probably pretty illegal too. To do
I'm
that.
sure.
Yeah, I think we borrowed our friend. There's a band called Dead Empires. It's a really badass band from upstate New York.
Mm-hmm.
And we were broken down in Albany, and so they actually like met up and like let us take their van. And,
that's nice of them,
which
man.
is pretty amazing. And yeah, and we finished the next couple shows. I forget how we even got it back, but yeah, it was a huge mess. But you're just kind of like, that's one of the most exciting things about tour is it really like, it's fun, but it also puts you on like in a lot of life or death kind of situations. Sometimes literally, but like even just things like that, where it's like, okay, we just blew a tire out in the desert. Like what do we do? You can't just. There's nothing. You have to act quickly if you want to salvage your show or not die. You just have to like kind of really be on your toes, and that's an exciting way to live. It's definitely not for everybody, and it's definitely really exhausting. but it's just an exciting way to live. And I think that's really like been one of the biggest attractions to it for our band, is like we just want to, for better or for worse, like be out there, living, not like, that's what the tough thing about this past year is we've been getting this album together and we've been shopping it, and we haven't been playing a lot because we want something new.
Mm-hmm.
So we feel like we're not really living, we're just kind of like, we've been recording and getting a lot of stuff together. Like we're still doing stuff and working, but like not playing, not getting out there it feels like part of you is gone. It feels like part of your life is just missing.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to finally be around, getting ready to get back out and do it, even if it sucks, it'll be better than not doing it.
Yeah. I didn't realize that fact until like after I had like stopped touring. And then now every time I think about it, I'm just like, man, I miss being out on the road. Yeah. And then there's some days where it's like winter and I'm like, actually, no, I don't want to be driving on icy roads and dying in the middle of December on some road in Kansas. Yeah. It's, I don't know, it's catch-22, I guess. There's good days and bad days, just like everything else. But yeah, I definitely miss it when I really sit down and think about it. So I definitely can relate with that aspect. Adventure. Yeah, big time.
And then you get to play music, and that, is part of it. You have like it simplifies life too, even if it's stressful and crazy trying to salvage something, it's simple, okay, what's your mission today? Like, get to the gig, play the gig, don't suck, don't die. Like life becomes very simple, and your like purpose on the earth becomes clear. I think that's like one of the big attractions to it, is it's like, okay, I know what I'm here for. Sometimes when you're working, your normal job, like for me, like I've been in food service jobs just to like make ends meet the last couple of years. Like, it's easy to kind of get lost in like the day to day when you're waiting around to kind of get back to what you are passionate about. You start to feel that existential dread. That doesn't happen so much on the road. I mean, it can, like when you're out for a while and maybe the shows aren't too well attended, it'll still catch up with you, but at least you're trying, you're out there trying to do what you set out to do.
Yeah, I can't tell you the amount of guys that I knew, myself included, that like worked at Hot Topics in between being on the road, because Hot Topic was the only place that literally had a thing in their handbook that said you can take off X amount of weeks if you are in a band to go tour, and just like that was their gig, man. They'd go tour, come home, work at Hot Topic for a month, and then back out. Not a bad deal.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I don't know if it's like that anymore, but this was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Probably not, but you never know. I'll look into it. I mean, I've been at coffee shops for years.
Same.
Doing that thing. So, and then, waiting a little bit, and I've always taught guitar, which I like, but yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to like have, jobs that will let you go away, and that's the toughest thing for most of the people. I mean, I know people that just they teach in schools so that they can do it on the summer, but I'm not ready to like give that much of my time over to a job yet. Maybe that'll change in the next 10 years depending on what happens with the band, but I think that like I'm still going to give it a few more years of shitty day jobs.
Hey man, at least you're willing to do that. I think a lot of people wouldn't do that. They would just either focus on, the band, or let the band go and just be like, well, I'm going to work because it didn't, I can't focus enough time on the band. It's definitely a fine line to walk there.
It is. And it takes years to like get anything out of it. I think that's what discourages people the most, is they're not expecting to have to maybe wait 4 years until, for us, it was like 3.5 years before we got like a real tour, quote unquote, opening for Intronaut, and it was like, wow, a real tour, and then it was, now it's a few years later and we're still fighting for anything that we can get, so it's maybe from the outside it seems like we're doing really well, and in different perspectives like we are, but like to us it's like, well, we still have so much to accomplish, compared to other bands. So I think part of it is like just kind of never being satisfied, but you got to enjoy it too. So
Yeah, and like not to get ahead of myself here, but I think too the fact you guys are about to be on your second record here, and I mean your trajectory can only go up, seemingly. I wouldn't think that you guys would
get
say,
it out.
Yeah. I wouldn't think that you guys would stay stagnant or keep getting more of the same. Especially, actually, kind of getting back to the band, because I remember when Chromaparagon came out. I just kind of heard about it through word of mouth. It wasn't necessarily like a website or anything that was, hey, check this out. It was just like, maybe it was on a YouTube link too. I get sucked down those YouTube wormholes and I'm like, oh, what's this? Sure. And so I guess when I first heard the music with like just your insanely crazy riffing, I wasn't expecting the kind of vocals that I got. So I was kind of taken aback by that at first, but there's something about it that fits in a weird way that I didn't expect, and I think that's kind of what struck a chord with me. And so now every time I show somebody this band, I'm like, okay, look, I know metal singing, a lot of people are kind of like on that, but I'm like, just listen to this for a second. And then when they hear like those melodies hit and like his vocal range in there, and not only that, like you guys have like a really fun energy in a lot of the songs, and I think that's what wins a lot of people over. So I guess in a roundabout way there, what I'm trying to get at is how did you figure out how to like harness all that into that record?
Yeah, it's like it wasn't really like a try thing. It was just like, so we had the EP out. The EP like was written kind of mostly kind of half before we even had the band together, and then half afterwards.
Okay.
But they were kind of like my melodies and lyrics that I was kind of like, here, this is where we're starting. Like, here's some songs, and then he made them come to life. So then when we got to Chromaparagon, it was kind of like we'd been a band for a couple years, so it was like, okay, I want you to like, and we all wanted, including for John, our singer, for him to be able to kind of spread his wings and just do his own thing, because like, you have to kind of let the people in your band like do their thing, or they're going to feel, like they're kind of stuck doing your thing, and then the band's not going to last, especially if they're like, an artist, and John's like very much an artist and a writer, and, puts out his own music and writes his own kind of prose and poetry aside from the band. So we just kind of were like, here, do your own thing. But, from his perspective, we were sending him songs like Queen Wolf, which is just like nonstop riffs and notes, and it's very progressive and like really fast and so much movement. So it was like kind of impossible to begin with to just write like a traditional vocal melody over. And I think how he reacted to it was like, okay, well, I'm going to just do my own version of what you're doing, like I'm going to out kind of, not like it's a competition, but like I'm going to out prog you with my vocal melodies. And he just had this kind of, his style was this free verse kind of thing. Like he has the words and he fits them to the song, where most people have the melody and then they find words for the melody. He would often do the opposite,
Yeah, it's incredibly unique, man. That's like the first thing that kind of struck me. I was like, well, I definitely haven't heard anything like this before. And that's really rare to say these days, especially with like how seemingly flooded the genre can get at certain points in time. When you do hear a band like that, it's like, oh shit, people need to know about this.
Yeah, I mean, we were thrown off by it too. There were songs where, it's very different now for this new album, but like there were ones for that album where it'd be like, it would be done for a minute, like the music would be done, and then I'd hear the vocals and be like, whoa, like what, what's going on? And then, but after that I'd hear it again and again and be like, okay, like I really like this. But so it's definitely like the thing we hear the most is that like either like the vocals lost me at first and I like it took me a minute, or like the vocals pulled me in right away because I was like, what the hell is going on,
Mm-hmm.
So, like there was a bunch of like, I don't know, we just like weren't afraid really to kind of just let it be what it is. It wasn't like, with that album, it's so kind of bizarre, really, compared to a lot of what was going on musically at the time, that we were like kind of like we were just letting it be what it is. We weren't trying to like cram a single in there or anything. It was just kind of like, this is what organically John came up with to our riffs that we just organically wrote. It was just kind of, it's a very natural thing. And we just like, John's not a metal head the same way that like I am, like growing up and digging into every like little corner of it to find something new.
Mm-hmm.
He came from more, he liked some metal and he likes all the classic bands, but then like, Tool and stuff he's really into. But he definitely doesn't come from like a metal singer's perspective, which is exactly what we wanted when we started the band, was to have a singer, not a screamer.
Yep.
Even though we like some of that, we like a lot of that stuff too. It was like, we want melody in the vocals, and we don't want somebody who's coming from the same perspective as us. And that was what John was. He's coming from more of he loves a lot of soul and blues, and that's the way he kind of, emotes his words. So, it was just kind of very organic. And now, since then we've tried to write together more. Whereas before it was like I would write a riff or Ray would write a riff, we'd make a song around it, and then, okay, here's the song, dude, write vocals to it. That's kind of what Chromaparagon was.
Mm-hmm.
Except for the occasional part that I had vocally. But now it's kind of more like from the ground up, we would be like, okay, what are your vocal, here's the song, okay, let's hear your vocal melodies, okay, like, what if it did this, and what if it did that? And then on this new record, it was our first time working with, just for pre-production, we ended up working with Machine, who's a record producer, and he brought in Mark Morton from Lamb of God.
Nice.
So this is the first time we were working with people outside the band, and really, like, the biggest focus was always the singer, and that's definitely the way the world, I guess, as a whole, they appreciate music, is they want to go to the singer first for the message, you know what I mean, for what they're going to feel or what they're going to think about the band.
Yeah.
And we never really looked at it like that. We always looked at it as like 4 legs of a table, like it's all equally important, so the whole thing is evolved a lot from the beginning.
So real quick, would it be safe to assume that John is a Freddie Mercury fan?
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, I thought so. I was like, I can hear some tinges in there of it in some vocal parts. I've been obsessed
He's
with
very theatrical.
Yeah, that's true. I've been obsessed with like Queen for a number of years, and the fact that the Bohemian Rhapsody just came out, I've seen it like twice now, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah, I heard it was really good. I haven't seen it, but looking forward to it. Yeah.
So
I mean, not like specifically, but we all love all that stuff.
Yeah,
we all grew up with all the classic rock stuff, and that's kind of like pretty much what's on in the van most of the time. And so I don't know. You'd have to ask him about like his specific influences, but he's just kind of his own. He's just like he's kind of out there.
I mean, it's nice to have that juxtaposition of those sounds, personally, because that uniqueness goes a long way. I think, you guys could have had somebody screaming a la like Keith Buckley, every time I die, that probably would match with your sound a little bit, but I don't know. It's good to take that different approach every now and then, especially with like clean singing vocals. It's very underutilized in metal.
Yeah, I mean, we get bored easily, and it's like with, I don't even know what I look for in music anymore, except for that I want it to do something new. I want to hear something. It could be the slightest thing, but like have your own spin on your thrash band or your death metal band or your doom band. Like, just give me something new, because if you just sound like the last one I heard, then it's going to be really hard to get behind it at this point. And that's being snobby a little bit. But when you pour through music constantly, and you teach music and you learn when you play in several bands and stuff, you're always kind of looking for something that's exciting. So this is just our way to kind of like, here's our little drop in the bucket of music. Here's our attempt to do something new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess, like, in your opinion, do you kind of like, I guess, purposely stay away from trends and like whatever's going on in the metal scene, or is it just kind of like you don't pay attention to it at all and you just do your own thing no matter what?
No, I mean, I listen to all new, everything new. I love just like digging through. I don't have to love something to listen to it, you know. It might not mean I'll be like super excited about it and like, you know, showing it to people, but like I check out every, you know, new record that comes across, you know, my plate. You know, I like any recommendations. I always like immediately put in my phone, you know. So I don't actively ignore anything, but
that's good. Yeah, that's how I am
think
too, man.
The writing is more just like, it's just organic, you know. It's just what comes out. I think that like when I write a riff, I kind of can pin it to where it came from. You know, like, oh, this is like a Jesus Lizardy riff, or this is like a fucking Melvin Z riff, or this is my like Mastodon thing, or whatever. You know, like I can kind of see it as to what it is, but it's not like I sit down to write that. It's just kind of like, you know, you just get like a little lightning bolt and you just follow the inspiration. You know, it's but yeah, I like to try to just be influenced by everything.
So one other thing I kind of wanted to touch on too, man, is your guitar style. It's, you know, not only like I was talking about, the vocals are pretty unique within the band, but your playing style is really unique as well. I don't hear many guitar players play like you do. The only other person that kind of comes to mind is Thomas Eric from Fall of Troy. But even then, there's like so many differences between you guys, but you still have like this weird kind of like ferocity, melody, spastic kind of, I know I can't put it into words properly, but it's just you don't hear many guitar players playing that way. It's nice when you can get something that's different from, you know, a standard like chug riff, or, you know, just harmonizing melodies and, you know, ripping off Judas Priest or something like that.
I got you. Yeah, thanks, man. I think that that came from years and years of like being obsessed with metal and chunky riffs, and then years after that, kind of going outside of that, and I don't know, just discovering other genres of music, and just kind of like trying to think more in chord progressions. Like Queen Wolf, for instance, like that riff is really, every part of that is very fast and moving, but like I look at it as a very simple chord progression. You know, like it's, to me, like I'm really writing more to chord progressions, I guess, more now than I was. Like even if the riff is like tapping and crazy, not every single one, but like most of the time, I'm thinking more of like, how is the song moving? You know, maybe the first riff is all F sharp and it's all just jumping around and like basically only playing F sharp. So, you know, the next riff might be even crazier, but I'm looking at it, okay, now it's at A, you know what I mean? This one moves from A to D, and, you know, I'm thinking more, what's the big picture, if that makes sense, you know? And there's these like little fragments of the big picture that become the crazy riff. Whereas like maybe when I was younger, it was just about like this chunky ass riff and then this riff and then this riff. And then you kind of get like, if you're in drop C, your whole song just sounds like C, you know, it just sounds like it never moves.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happened, where I was kind of getting bored of that and trying to find, you know, music that moved more. And then also like a big band that changed it for me, like Mastodon was a big one for like trying to dig deeper into just like themes and just like the atmosphere and of like metal, you know, that kind of changed things for me. But then there's a band called Torch who do the sludgy thing, but they did like a lot of it in like major keys, and it sounded so heavy and like new to me in the major key that it made me want to try that, you know, like, well, what if I apply the crazy atmospheric Mastodon thing but to like a major key, you know, and that's kind of where a lot of Moontooth stuff grew from. It's just trying to just do opposite of what metal would do, but make it sound kind of metal.
Yeah, no, I think you succeed in that like exponentially. It's definitely its own thing, and it still sounds metal, you know, at its core, I believe.
Yeah, sonically it's heavy, but the material is not what you'd expect, you know, from a band that would categorize itself as metal.
Yeah, even then, like I don't know, I'm weird about like genres and stuff like that. I wouldn't. Metal is such a broad term to me, you know, like I hate all these like subgenres and stuff like that. It's just like, man, it's heavy metal, you know, it's fast, it's loud. That's pretty much all that should matter there.
Yeah, I don't have the patience to try to like really pick subgenres
Yeah.
for us. We've always just made them up as we went along. But that's good. I think if you're too easily identifiable as like this type of band, then that means that you're not like
That's a good
you're not
point,
saying something
man.
new.
Yeah, I never really thought about that, where it's just like, yeah, we're a death metal band. We sound like insert death metal band here, but in 2018. Yeah, that's,
Yeah, you could love that music, but it's just kind of like, I think it's more exciting when it's not easy to categorize,
Yeah.
But to each their own, I mean, I don't think of it in an elitist way. I don't think of it as being one's better than the other. It's just what do you want? What do you want to hear when you like wake up in the morning, or when you're driving to work? Like, what are you looking for out of music?
Yeah, no, I definitely think
Some people just want the fucking, they want the like Five Finger Death Punch. Some people just want the like, brutal, over the top death metal band. That's all they want, and that's fine. And then there's people that are just like never satisfied and looking for something new every day. And I'm hoping that Moontooth can be something that they'll go, at the very least, just go, oh, that's different, that's cool. I'll like check out a couple songs, because nobody has an attention span for, like really digging through every single, thing right off the bat. So It's like if we can just get someone, just grab somebody for an instant and just like have them pay attention. I think that's kind of what we're after. And
honestly,
hopefully
man,
it'll go from there.
That's what happened with me. Is I heard like a couple songs at first, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I'm not sure how I feel about it. And then over the course of the next few days, I found like myself humming the songs in my head, and I was like, fuck, I need to go home and listen to this again. And then I would check out other songs, and it just kind of was like, okay, I should probably just get the album. There's no point in just listening to songs on YouTube over and over again. So that's kind of how it started.
That's cool. Well, thank you. Thanks for actually doing it. Yeah. So that's what I mean. Like, as long as the fact that you went and bought the album is or whatever, just went and found it just to listen to it, like that's amazing. That's kind of what we're after. But even if it was just kind of like you went back and listened to it one more time, to me that's like a success, because we found some way to make anyone interested in a world of music. Everybody's got like constantly inundated with new shit every day.
Yeah.
So it has to kind of stand out to like for you to go back to it.
So let's switch gears here now, and let's get into the new stuff that's being worked on, or is already finished recording, I assume.
Yeah, the new album is called Crux, which we were going by the definition of like a particular point of difficulty, crossroads, which is kind of what the last year or two has been for us, both in like the band and personal lives, just kind of approaching 30 and kind of looking at like, your perspective is a lot different when you're 30 than it is when you're 24. And, especially on what you want out of, your life. And some of us are getting married or, moving and stuff like that. And it just became a little bit harder. Becomes a little bit harder to do this shit every year,
Yeah.
And, so that kind of worked its way into the lyrics. A lot of John's lyrics are about that and about his struggle through, like Chromaparagon is very much like the world's fucked, but we can make it better, and we can do this, and like we're going to do this. And then this album Crux is more of the whole what if we can't, you know what I mean? Like what if it's not going to get better? And so it's a little darker than the last one. And like I had mentioned before, so we toured a lot on Chromaparagon, and one of the tours we did was with this band Fit for an Autopsy.
Yeah, and Tombs, right?
Yep, in Tombs.
Yeah.
And we were out with them, and along that tour, this record producer Machine had heard of us and got in touch with us through the Fit for an Autopsy guys. And he came out into a show and really loved it, and we were really excited because for me and Ray especially, like the Lamb of God, like Ashes of the Wake, and then like Clutch, Blast Tyrant, those were like really, we were obsessed with those when we were like 15, 16, and we played those records all the time, like every party, and we used to we used to know how to play half of each album, and we just jam on it all the time. So, and Machine produced both of those records, so like we were really excited, and especially as Ray is a producer and an engineer, from an engineer standpoint, was really excited to have him be involved. So he got involved. He reached out to us. He came out to a show. He really liked the band, and he was like, "I want to, somehow work on your next record." So we didn't have a label, and at the time, our network had fallen apart. We had a booking agent who retired, and we had a manager who we had amicably parted ways with. So we were in kind of a weird time, but he was really into working on it, and but we couldn't afford him. So essentially what ended up happening is that he said, "Well, I'm going to do it anyway."
Oh wow!
And he brought in Mark Morton from Lamb of God because they had talked about working on a record together. Mark wanted to get into the production end of things, and he was like, he asked me like, "What do you think of if we involve him in the pre-pro?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." Like, what the fuck, To us, it was like a few years ago, we probably would have been like, I don't know if we want to work with anybody. But in order to kind of keep things exciting and just kind of like, grow up as a band, and also just to not be, bullheaded and say no to somebody who's like way more experienced than us as far as making records, we were like, okay, cool. What do we, let's give it a shot. And so what ended up happening is that we went to Mark's for a week at the end of last year, right after Christmas. We were at his house for a week. We worked on the songs with them like every day, and we just, talked about the strengths and weaknesses of every part, and we kind of just would like meet in the middle on certain things, and it came out really good. Some of the songs were more done than others, and they kind of just guided us through. They would just give us opinions on things, and we'd take them or leave them, and argue about it and stuff. And it was a really good experience. And essentially, like, since we didn't have a label, the plan was that our drummer Ray was going to do the bulk of the recording, and then Machine would come back in to do vocals and mix it. And unfortunately, he got contracted to do some other record where he was going to actually make money, and it didn't work out the way we planned. But we got really like what we wanted, which was just a little bit of guidance, is a little bit of outside perspective. We'd been sitting on some of the stuff for a little while, and some of it wasn't done, and we'd never had let anybody else in to say like, this isn't strong enough, or this is too confusing, or this is too long. And it was easy to be like, hurt by that at times, but it also was like super eye-opening, and it was a good experience. But I mean, so essentially we ended up just recording the record ourselves, and we used, most of what was the guidance that we got from those guys, and some of the stuff we, just kind of met in the middle of what we liked and what they liked, and I think it really helped the record a lot. But it's I can finally talk about it. I can't talk about which label it is yet because the details of that are being finalized.
Yeah,
but,
no worries there, man.
It's gonna come out in March, is what it's looking like, and we'll start dropping new songs like early, like probably January. We'll have a little documentary out probably by the time this is out. Where we can it'll show a little bit of us working with Mark and Machine, and talk a little bit more about what the record's all about. But I'm really excited to finally have something new out, because we basically put a year into it, and to trying to shop it and trying to build a team around it and doing all the like behind the scenes like pain in the ass stuff. So we're very eager to just have new music out and just get back to touring and just meeting people, fucking playing shows.
Yeah, I would have to imagine too, between like Chromaparagon and that amount of time between getting this made, you guys definitely like learned and improved on a lot of stuff. So like, what were some of those things that you found most important to like kind of bring into this next record?
I think we really wanted this record to break us through a certain ceiling that we were at,
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that like there are levels to this shit, and I think that we didn't want to be we didn't want to really ever be pigeonholed as like a prog band, and I don't know, I mean, for me it was just like I wanted to write more timeless, better songs, like that you didn't have to be obsessed with like guitar or obsessed with like progressive music or metal, something where like where we still kind of could get you with all the crazy riffs and times and stuff like that, but that kind of, I don't know, just like would feel better and like and just kind of be able to reach a broader audience, you know, without making it softer, because it's definitely not softer by any means. In fact, it's a lot darker and heavier, but, you know, and just kind of expand on what we were already doing. But I think the word I'm looking for is focus it, you know. At times, Chromaparagon's, you know, in my opinion, and Chromaparagon's, like, in its worst moments, is just kind of unfocused. It's a little bit all over the place, and that's what some people really like about it.
Yeah, I think that's part of its charm. I would agree with that.
I think that we're playing music together longer now and kind of understood where each of us were coming from and wanted to do with the band. And so we wrote more from the same headspace with this one. And I think that to me, it sounds more cohesive. So to me, it's much more what I always wanted Moontooth to sound like, you know, and I think but even better though, because I couldn't imagine, you know, at the time where we started the band, like what John could really do with his vocals, you know, or what we can really do as a band, you know, and just kind of like, I wanted to write songs that, you know, you could sing along to, you know, a little bit too. And I don't know, I'm really excited to see how people react to it. I think that they'll be surprised.
I think that goes a long way with me too, is like having those songs that you can sing along with, but also like having those kind of heavier, fun, fast songs. Because like, you know, like one of my favorite bands is Dillinger Escape Plan, and by far they are just so insane with their energy, but they have those songs that are so catchy that you can sit there and sing along to, and they're fun, and you remember them, you know, you think about those songs. And even though it's really out of the ordinary for them to do a song like that, or at least it would have been at a certain point in time, now it was like par for the course for them. I think having that,
you don't really question it with that band.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's the thing, is sometimes bands, they make this like leap and they leave some of their fans behind. I think it's kind of a natural thing, you know. Now that I'm a little older, and I guess I can understand why bands start to go a certain way after, you know, a period of time where they're not trying to out brutal themselves or out prog themselves anymore. They just want to like write stuff that makes them feel good, and it makes other people feel good too. And then the old fans will go like, "Oh, this sucks," you know, because it's not what they grew up with. But you know, like a band like Dillinger is like, they can do it, and at least in my opinion, you know, you don't really second guess it. You just kind of like, okay, well, that still sounds like them. And I've never been the stubborn fan that's not like, that just needs things to stay the same.
Yeah, same, you know? Here. That's why, like you
and
mentioned,
for us, like, we're a new band, so I feel like we're kind of just expanding on what we did with Chromaparagon and kind of just showing what else we can do. You know, there are songs that are way heavier, and then there's songs that are all like clean guitar and finger picked and much moodier and darker. So I think that it'll kind of show people, like, you know, what else we can do, you know, and hopefully they'll accept it like in the same way they accepted the last one.
Well, I think that definitely works in your favor incredibly well, you know, because it's your second record. People don't have like this full discography to expect one thing out of you. So it's nice to have like this other chance to show like other kind of like aspects of your musicianship, you know?
Yeah, totally. And it's very far from being just Chromaparagon 2. So if that's what people expect, then they'll be bummed. But I don't think people will be bummed. I think I mean, you're always going to like your new album the most, but I think it's like, I just think it's the better version of Moontooth, you know? It's kind of realizing more of our potential to write, you know, things that just stand alone, that don't lend itself to a genre whatsoever. You know, it's just, you know, we always kind of just wanted to be a good rock band. It was not, you know, the riffs and the progressive crazy shit that just came from, you know, or some of our influences, but it was always just about like, let's just be a good heavy rock band in the classic sense of, you know, the genre, not like trying to be a niche thing, but just being something that everyone could get into, you know, whether it's like your mom or your cousin that only likes, like, you know, just like power violence, you know. everybody could at least enjoy it to an extent, or or really love it, but just there's something in it for everybody. That's kind of like the goal.
So I assume like once Chromaparagon was out and released and you guys kind of started touring, and this seems the case with most bands, you were pretty much constantly writing from that point on still? Like are you one of those guys that just keeps writing things and, kind of keeps it in his back pocket, so to speak, for the next record?
Yeah, I mean, I already have a few songs for the next one.
There you go.
I mean, I think that, some of the riffs on this one, I mean, part of the shitty thing is that by the time, I wrote a song and now I got to perfect it and now I got to teach it to the guys, and the same would go for anybody else that wrote the song.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time it gets to the point where you're now recording it, they might have been around for 2 years, from its inception of like, oh, I got this idea for a riff to when it's actually on a record.
Mm-hmm.
That shit takes a long time, at least for us. I mean, we're trying to remedy that. We want to start recording the next album like immediately, pretty much, so that we don't have to like do this 2-3 year cycle thing anymore.
Take the Black Sabbath approach.
Pretty much. I think we're going back to that because, people don't have the attention span. I mean, I hear all these things all the time about like the full length album format. Every 2 years putting out a full length album is not really viable anymore in the world where people don't buy, albums. You're probably better off maybe do an album, but then do an EP, and then do a single, and then do another EP, and then do another single, because you just need to keep having. I'm not saying I agree with that, but that's kind of where things are headed. It's more about singles, more about new all the time, new content, new song, new video. So,
I've seen examples of that, and I think the band that's like perfecting it the most right now is Aborted. They pretty much put out an album and an EP every year, and it's consistently good and consistently like better than the last thing they put out somehow. And I'm just like, how the fuck do they keep doing this? I mean, they're just machines.
I imagine
that
a lot of those dudes, like bands like that, there's probably like one. I'm just assuming, but I feel like a lot of times there's like one dude who does all the writing and probably like records his own shit, and then gets people to play it. I don't know if that's true for them.
I don't know. I know their guitar player is one of those guys that like does solo, like I wouldn't say virtuoso stuff on the side, but like he does like solo stuff on the side, and he's pretty damn good guitar player. But yeah, I would imagine he writes most of this stuff, but I could be wrong on that too. I'm just kind of guessing myself.
Yeah, I mean, we have this thing where, we kind of really need to bounce it off of each other for a while until it feels like a Moon2 song. It's not like, it's very rare that one of us will bring something finished to the table that we won't manipulate at least a little bit, if not like completely, and that's good. It's like, I'll have something and I'll think it's done, and I'll bring it in, and Ray or whoever will be like, this is weird, maybe we shouldn't do this many times. And I'll be like, what do you mean? But then he'll be right, and we'll play it and it'll be better. And then, you kind of just go down that rabbit hole for a while. But that's what I think is important, so that everyone's ultimately happy with it when it comes out, is that like everybody had a chance to kind of like to chew on it and kind of make it their own. Otherwise it'll just feel like one person's song, one person's project. And I think that's why it takes us a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But, another reason is that we've just been trying to grapple with the fitting into the music industry, and that's been the hardest thing about this band is, we get opportunities and people come around, but like sometimes we don't really vibe, and we don't really think that they get where we're coming from. I mean, that's kind of why we worked with Machine, is because I felt like he totally got what we were trying to do. We weren't trying to go full butt rock and just write simple shit with hooky. Every song has a hook chorus and stuff. He was, he's like, you're doing crazy progressive metal with a soulful singer, and I really like that. And that's kind of like, all right, I'm comfortable with that perspective. That's kind of what we, more or less, maybe not like it wasn't the game plan from the beginning, but like that's really what it ultimately boils down to, is a soulful, like melodic singer, juxtaposed over like this really wild, crazy rock band that's pretty metal at the same time too. So it's like, okay, you get it, but when we get the feeling that somebody's kind of trying to come in and take over it really kind of turns us off. We're very much control freaks. So, and people don't really know where to put us. We're sometimes too heavy, and we're sometimes not heavy enough.
Yeah.
But from our perspective, it works. Like when we got Fit for an Autopsy and Tombs, we were like, okay, well, fucking awesome. But at the same time, we were like, well, I don't know if we're going to get eaten alive every night. Those are two very heavy bands. But it went over well every night. Like it was never a night where we got folded arms.
Honestly, those are
like
kind of
some.
Sorry.
But no, it's just it wasn't like every night we would came home with hundreds of diehard fans, but we never got like resistance. It always felt like we were accepted.
Yeah.
And some of those shows were really, really great. And when nobody there knew who we were. So I think that people maybe in general are becoming more tolerant to different genres, but just because it's not easy to categorize or to label doesn't mean that people won't get it or they won't dig it. I think that's the risk that you'd have to take when you're dealing with like a more of a weird kind of mixed genre band.
Yeah, and I would think too, man, it has to be like a really like big compliment to you having, this big producer that wants to work with you guys. He's a fan of what you do, he gets what you do, and he's like, yeah, I want to work with you no matter what it takes. And he helps you through the pre-production process. And like, I mean,
yeah, it was huge. That was like the first time we let anybody in, but it felt right because he seemed to get it, and we already respected some of what he'd done. It wasn't like he wasn't like a stranger to us.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I think it pays to be picky. I think there's times where we've said no to things where, I mean, there's been plenty of times where we said no, and I look back and be like, maybe we should have said yes. But, we just go by our gut. If it doesn't feel right, then we're not going to do it. So that's why it takes so long sometimes to get an album out, because you're trying to weigh all the options, and then you kind of like find the right route for it. I'm hoping that we can kind of, where our next one will come out is where we can stay for a while and we don't have to redo this whole process. Because this process, of trying to find a label or find management and stuff like that, it sucks. It takes forever, and you're waiting. You have this finished album and you just want to go, but you're kind of like trying to be smart about it and be strategic about it. And I'm very excited for this stage to be over, and so is everybody else in the band.
Was there a point in time where you like maybe considered doing like the crowdfunding thing like a lot of bands have done?
We've always been kind of weird with that. I think that we've always kind of felt like, let's save it for like when we're like totally fucked and we like really need it for something.
Yeah.
And I think that we're a little bit more like, I mean, we would have done it if it was like the last straw, basically. Because, I mean, you need money to put out a record by yourself, and we were kind of tapped on this one, so it might have come down to that at some point. But yeah, I don't know, we're not like fundamentally against it by any means, but I think there's something to like, you should figure it out, and then if you get your album out and it rules and then your van breaks down, okay, maybe then you use your crowdfunding thing for some help when you actually really need help.
Yeah.
Most people, I don't know, I think sometimes people who use it are somewhat greedy with it. I don't think it's always the case, but if your van gets broken into and you get all your gear stolen, and that's one thing to me. But like just to get your album out, it depends. It depends on the situation. So I think we just kind of reserve that to like very much like dire circumstance. We would ask for money from our fans. I'd much rather just be like, here's a new T-shirt we came out with. Here's a pre-order for the album. At least you're getting something. But I guess that's what they do with crowdfunding. So I don't know. We just we've tried to avoid it.
Yeah, it's always an interesting thing to me because I've talked to bands that have had great success with it, and other bands that have been like, well, we got something out of it, but it wasn't necessarily good or bad. And then there's bands that just rely on it entirely, and it's kind of mind-boggling to me that that's how they do everything now.
It's like a weird time for music, and people are doing things they didn't used to do, and I guess that's one of them. Now you hear about bands like, since they don't sell as many records anymore, they'll charge their fans like $50, $100, $500 to meet them before the show, and come to
Yeah.
sound check and all that shit.
That
Like, all
definitely
stuff
leaves
to
a
me-
sour taste in my mouth big time.
Right, me too. But then, I also have to think like, well, these guys are like just probably doing this because they need to do this to, like, pay their mortgages and shit.
Mhm.
And it's like, I can never imagine like charging a fan to meet me, but like I understand that like fans do this all the time, where they'll charge a little bit more for a ticket if you want the VIP thing, and that's the kind of a sign of the times we're in. Like you basically have to just like, I don't know, do anything you can to get a little bit of money out of the people that support your band, because they're streaming your album, they're not buying it.
Yeah. And the thing I realized
all of
about that too is it's not necessarily the bands themselves that are like, oh, we're doing these VIP tickets to get money. It's usually like management or whoever's, involved in that kind of tour process. It's like, hey, if you charge this amount to meet people, you're going to make X amount more dollars. And then the band's probably just like, yeah, okay, I guess that makes sense. Because even the guys that I know, they don't do it willingly. They don't do it to like, try to take money from fans in a nefarious way. It's just kind of like,
No.
this is how I got to make ends meet. And I'm like, yeah, I get it, but it's still kind of gross, because like what happened to the days of waiting around, after a show out back near the van or the bus to like say hi or shake a hand or get a CD autographed. You can still do that even with the VIP tickets if you really try hard enough. But that's just
I think
my
it's just
opinion.
that the rule of like, well, if somebody will pay to do this, then it'll help me. It'll help me like start a college fund for my kid or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just there's just not a lot of security in this world for the type of, unless you're there are people that are like really smart and figure it out, and then there's plenty of people that are just kind of like they're just flying by the seat of their pants and just kind of taking it one day at a time and just trying to like find any way to make an extra buck while they do this. That's the unfortunate thing. I think they had that Music Modernization Act passed, and maybe I'm praying that we're on the cusp of like a new golden age for the music industry, because it desperately needs it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Especially with how much technology's changed, the industry cannot keep up with it right now, and it's hurting the artists.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to what we were saying before about putting out stuff more often than, like, I like the way the Melvins do it and have done it for a long time, and that they'll just do a short pressing of a record for a tour, and only for that tour, and it'll just have like a new song and some other weird shit on the other side. Like I have one or two of those that I bought seeing them, and they just do it all the time, and they just do different art, and you need certain facilities at your disposal like to pull that off, but if you just budget your money towards new limited edition merch, and that's kind of like something that your fans look forward to from you, then that's like a smart way to do it, where you're not like just charging for an autograph. You know what I mean? But like,
Yeah.
it depends on the situation and on the band and what they do and their fan base. So
Yeah, no, it's definitely a weird point in time for all that stuff.
yeah.
We got off track there a little bit. So I want to go back to when you were about to record everything. So you did how long was the pre-production with Mark and Machine?
It was only like 7 days.
Okay.
I think we were there for 8, and the first one was just kind of getting set up. We basically set up like a makeshift studio, and we set up all our gear in Mark's garage, and we just kind of like would, from 9 a.m. till like midnight every day, we would be in there just grinding out and discussing and arguing, but like at the same time we would be recording it just as like a demo. It was just kind of like documenting what things were being changed from like the original ideas and stuff.
Yeah.
So we did that pre-production, and then we were home we came home on New Year's Eve, and then I think we started drums like the first week of February, I want to say. And then that took a week. We did all the drums we did that at a different place called Tone House, which we rented out. It had a bigger live room and all this like crazy outboard gear and microphones. So we rented a room to do drums, and then we did bass took like 2 weeks, and the guitar took like, I took off work for 2 weeks, and then we did it like steady, and then I did, another week or two and then just did solos kind of like sporadically as I finished them. But that was all at our drummer Ray's studio, which is called Westfall. And then John did vocals. I'd say we probably finished everything. Let me think for a second. We probably finished everything in the summer, I guess, and then something like that. We probably finished everything by the end of the summer, and then since then we've just been mixing it, mastering it, and kind of getting a rollout together, getting content. We shot a music video and we did this documentary thing, and we have all this other stuff that's coming. So we kind of wanted to try to like get everything done before we even like tell anybody anything about it. That was sort of the plan. This whole year got sucked into recording it and mixing it, mastering it, and then now like getting all the other fun stuff together, album art, and a lot goes into like an album rollout.
Yeah.
And we just really wanted to be smart about it, and it really just got to the point where it was like, let's just wait till the new year to put it out, just so it's new in the new year and not coming out at the very end of 2018.
Yeah, that's a tough one, man, because it's not going to be on anybody's end of year list because it is the end of the year. And then you got to worry about like kind of the whole year after that. Be a little
strategic about all that stuff. Yeah.
So when you're go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say when we did guitars, we were like super like attentive to like every part. Like we're not like the type of band that just like gets a guitar tone and does all like the one rhythm side and one the other. Like every single part kind of has like a tone, curated for it. We'd have our standards for amps and stuff like that, but then like we would always want to try other things. We borrowed a bunch of heads from people and from our friends or from other studios, and we like very much every section we would approach it like a new recording, as far as like what does the guitar need to do here? Does it need to be super thick and low end and heavy? Does it need to be like low gain but like real aggressive and bitey, or is it like totally clean but needs to be super pristine sounding, and then that's even before like adding effects and pedals and stuff like that. So that's why guitars took a long time. But I think that when you hear it, you'll know why, I hope.
That's pretty crazy. You just read my mind, because that's like part of what I was going to ask you about is like what kind of like gear you use, and also like when you were recording, how much of that like live sound do you go for versus like overdubbing and like, adding a little bit of layer to the tone and guitar like parts? Well, the gear, all kinds of gear. I mean, as far as amps, like I have a 74 high watt DR103. That's been my main head for years now. And the main kind of like go-to is that mixed with a 5150. But then we switched out the 5150 for a Soldano that we rented a lot. We also got Ray, our drummer, built a Marshall Plexi. It's like a clone of a Plexi that sounds really sick. So that would sometimes replace the high watt. We also got a Mesa Mark IV in there at some point, and we got we had a bunch of shit. And then 2 different cabinets all the time. It was like one 212, one 412. And then cleans, like I have this old 60s Fender Vibro champ, and then Ray's got a deluxe reverb, and guitars. I'm endorsed by this company called Vigier. It's a French guitar company, so we'd use those. I have 2 of those that we used. I have an old Les Paul, and we used an American 1990 Strat. Les Paul is actually a 90 standard, and Ray has a couple of PRSs that we would use for certain things. And we had a baritone, an electro baritone we used a lot, and then all types of pedals, a lot of different pedals, all different, like probably 6 different types of distortion pedals, and some fuzzes, and 2 different types of octave pedals, and 3, 4, 5 different types of reverbs and delays. And we were constantly like asking friends to bring shit over that we could try, just to get different colors all over the album. So you get these different kind of vibes and different songs, 2 different phasers. And then
what was the other question that you asked?
Just kind of about like getting the right mix of like that live sound and kind of like overdubs with guitar parts.
Oh yeah. So like the tones we'd want to sound kind of like what it sounds like live, but I'm sure you could tell if you listen to Chromaparagon, like we're definitely into overdubs and kind of, we don't really look at it as like, it doesn't have to be the same exact thing that it'll be live, because when we do live shows, we're super loud and we're very, we do a lot of running around and jumping off of amps and just being stupid, jumping in the crowd, stuff like that. So we don't really care if like you don't hear that like that triple track Dan Electro baritone. We're just kind of like in the studio. We just like to go really crazy. Normally like we probably track a lot more than is actually used, which Ray, who has to mix it and master it, like it definitely is not fun for him. At the end, but we tend to do too much, and then we strip it down. But I mean, yeah, it's just kind of like if we track it and it doesn't do anything, then we scrap it. But if it's tracking that sounds sick, and it stays. It doesn't matter if it won't sound like that live to me. I can totally understand the opposite perspective, but I mean, we don't really approach recording is where we can really kind of like experiment and just kind of build a massive sound. And that's kind of what's exciting about it. If it was just us live, then that would be cool too, but it wouldn't be as exciting to listen to, in my opinion. So yeah, we're way into like overdubs and just like putting weird shit in there. There's like one solo where Ray is just screaming into the pickup on the Dan Electro, and it just sounds like a weird guitar solo. Just whatever fucking weird shit comes up. That's the stuff I look forward to in recording. I hate just sitting there and like tracking it and going, is the tone good? Is the take good? Okay, next section. Is the tone good? I don't know if the tone's good anymore. Let's go back. Let's try it with a different amp. Okay, save that. Let's try it with another amp. That part of it makes me insane. But when you start getting like weird and overdubs, that's when it gets fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say that seems like the best part about recording is like all the experimentation. So that way, like when people do go see you live, it's like, oh shit, this is way different and still just as good. Like you need that kind of juxtaposition of the two things. Like, yeah, here we are on record, here we are live, but you're still getting the same damn songs. Just a different take, so to speak, on them.
Yeah. We don't like just stand there and like staring at our guitar necks. We make it an entertaining show, and that's kind of like that's why people will want to come see us, because they have fun. And they don't really ever care if they don't hear the harmony, on the bridge. They don't really give a shit because they're having a good time, because it's a rock show. It's not like a recital. Everybody is entitled to their opinion on that. Like I could totally see being like, it doesn't sound the same live. I wasn't into it, but I don't know if I've ever said that, because I don't really, I don't go to a show to hear the recording.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've only
I want to get a feeling.
Yeah, truthfully, I've probably said that like maybe once or twice, where it was like, they didn't sound like better than their recording, but they also didn't sound like good either. So it was just kind of one of those things. It's like, well, they played songs.
You should be able to play the riffs. Don't get me wrong. Like you should be able to play your parts. If you're like, I mean, and that's what pisses me off about running tracks sometimes too. Is it's like, okay, well, certain things, sure, you can run on a track, but when it's a part, it just, to me, it seems like that just takes the whole point of the show away. Like I'd rather see you fuck it up, but like trying to do it than like just have coming out of the PA. Like, but some people, but like that's like the level of perfection that it seems like people come to expect. Where like all of a sudden like the backup vocals, like do the backup harmonies need to be on the track? Like, well, depending on the band, you might say, yeah, they do. It would sound naked without it. But like, I personally don't need to hear them. I'd rather just let me hear the band. I came to hear, these 4 people on stage or 5 people or whatever it is. I want to hear what they can do for real, in real life, in real time. For better or for worse. It doesn't have to be perfect. But I think that there's just a certain people just expect perfection. They just expect everything to be like on the metronome and just like the recording. And I just think that I don't agree with that. I'd rather see it. I'd rather just see it in real time. That's kind of it, but that's just my opinion. You know, I don't really claim to be right about that.
Yeah, I think there's like a level of authenticity that kind of gets lost there too. If you know you're expecting like the band to sound exactly like the record, I mean that's so rare for that to happen. But yeah, it's a weird thing, man. I definitely I don't know. I don't expect that, but I know there are people out there that do, and it's just kind of like, why? When does that ever come into play? Like when you're going to see a band live, you should expect the complete opposite. If anything, you know, you want them to like blow your mind off seeing them live as opposed to listening to that record in your headphones.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've seen plenty of bands where I didn't get it until I saw it live because it was a very different thing live. And I think those are usually the bands that I love. Is like when I was like, I thought it was, you know, I thought the record was cool, and then, but when I heard it live, I was like, oh, okay. Like when I feel this in a room from the amplifiers, now it like totally like feels different. And when I go back to the recording even sounds different. I think that like, you know, to me, that's where I want to see. That's where I want to see the band shine is live. I don't really, you know, because anybody can record at this point in their fucking bedroom, and they can have they can download a perfect amp sound, and they can, you know, program a drum set that sounds like Thomas Hawk, and they can, you know, it's all like just at the touch of your fingertips. You might have to pay for some of it, but you know, you basically can just download it all, and you still have to be creative. Don't get me wrong, and you have to work hard, but it's like I want to see somebody kind of reach to have like the craziest guitar sound I've ever heard live. You know what I mean? And like, and have like this is the gnarliest chemistry, you know, and the drummer that like, you know, feeling the way they play in the pocket live is like moving. You know, if it sounds just like the record, then it's, to me, it's not going to move me. You know, I want to like see this shit be played out. You know, like it's like going to see a play, you know, and then you get there and they just play a movie on a screen. You know, it's you're not seeing people interact and with each other and with their instruments. I don't know, I'm getting a little carried away.
No, you're fine.
I've seen bands do it really, really well, and I've seen bands do it where I was kind of like, you don't need that. You know, you just play this song live and it'll sound fucking great. And you know, all that other stuff is, I don't know, who is that for? You know what I mean? And do you need that to play your song, or is that, you know, is that for someone else? You know, or is that to like, I don't know. I think it says more about a band when they're just bare bones. You know, like, I mean, like Riot. Like if I play with Riot for the last 5 years, we don't even have like a crew most of the time. We just show up and like put the pedal boards on the ground ourselves and use rented gear and just play 2-hour sets and on just like whatever we show up with. And people are always really psyched. You know, it's not always perfect, but like they feel the authenticity of it, I think is what it is. You know.
Yeah, that goes a long way.
They can feel that we're not phoning it in, and that we're like, you know, we're not like rock stars making tons of money and just kind of like, you know, getting through another gig. Like we're trying to bring them, like against all odds, trying to bring them a great rock show. And I think that's, and just as 5 dudes on stage, and Moonsuit's the same way. It's just like, here's 4 dudes and their instruments. Like you're either going to like this or you're not, but you know, it's going to be authentic.
Yeah, because from your perspective, you know, you're thinking like, oh shit, this person took time out of their night and paid money to come see me play my songs. I have to make sure that they're getting, not necessarily like thinking like they have to get their money's worth, but you want to make sure that they're enjoying that time that they took out of their life to kind of come see you and spend that time, you know, enjoying this thing that we all love, and live shows and music and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, music puts you in the moment, and that's why I like playing live more than any other aspect of playing music, you know, even more than writing it. I like playing for people because it really, you have to live from one, you know, nanosecond to the next, and you have to really like, and the worst shows are when you're not doing that, when you're thinking about something else, and then you're like, you're phoning it in, or you're fucking up, or you know, you maybe they can tell or maybe they can't, but I always feel like the crowd can tell if I'm not in a good mood, and it affects my show. You know, so it's like, but like it's all real, like it's, and you're in that moment, like people are, you're communicating something through your guitar and through the way you're acting and through your body language on stage, and they're communicating back to you, and that's that cycle of like energy that's like very like in the moment, like very present, is something that people don't really get to experience a lot, through their day-to-day life. Like everybody's thinking about what happened to them or what's going to happen to them or what they have to do or what they should have done, and then you don't get that in their live scenarios. So when it's done right, when it's going well,
Yeah, it's an escape for both sides.
Exactly, and it's a very interesting experiment every night. That's what's been fun about touring, and sometimes it's not fun because it's not going well, but like when it is, it's like it's very interesting, I like I've experienced it around the world a little bit with Bryant. Like sometimes like we'll be in Germany and like it'll be a packed show and like I'll feel like, man, we're dying, like nobody's moving around, like nobody's headbanging, everybody's just staring like blankly at us, and I'll come off stage like, God, I don't know how that went, and then everybody goes, that was amazing. And you're like, really? Like, I couldn't even tell if you guys even liked it, and then you'll go to we'll go to Spain or go to Greece, and people are fucking, like, before you even hit a note, they're, like, jumping off the stage and stuff. So, but it's all like the same thing. We're just, like, kind of communicating something to each other, It's just, like, a really interesting experiment every night. And then once you start incorporating too much technology, I think that you're losing some of that like person to person in the moment connection,
Yeah, no, I agree, because it's taking away like all of, I guess, the realism, for lack of a better word there, out of playing instruments and hearing them how they sound live as opposed to like digitally and on a record and everything like that.
Yeah, man, you want it like, dangerous in the moment. Like if I fuck up, everyone's gonna know.
Hey, sometimes that's fun though, man.
Right,
I know I've been to shows where like a guy's messed up like a note in a solo or just like missed a chord. And it's like, oh well, he recovered and that was funny, and he made a funny face that he fucked up. That was okay.
Yeah, it's not, if you're fucking up your whole set, it's one thing. But if you're into music that's really intensely musical and physical, and you have to have a kind of a sense of humor about it too, it's like, and everybody's a human being, I don't really care if you fuck up, I really don't, as long as you're trying. If you're like, if you look bored and you're like, you look like you're phoning it in and you're fucking up, then it's like, I might just walk out, but it's exactly right though. Yeah. I'd rather see it, it's real, it's, you don't feel like you're just seeing like a copy and pasted performance from the previous night. You feel like you're really like getting an experience with these people.
Yeah. So with the new record, man, like what's the one thing, you don't have to speak for the whole band, but like maybe just you personally, that you are the most proud of that you accomplished with this record?
I mean, it's hard to put that into one answer. I think that at this point, like just when we get it the fuck out, that'll be like what I'm most proud of. Because there's been times where like, are we ever going to get this thing out?
Yeah.
And it always takes a little bit longer than you're expecting, but this time it took a lot longer. And a lot of the reasons were kind of like, more just kind of like trying to like wait out certain options and stuff like that. So it got really like, frustrating, just kind of sitting on a record. But I mean, with the record itself, I think like, I mean, I definitely am really proud of what I did guitar-wise on it. I think that tone-wise and the actual material, it's definitely like the most happy I've ever been on any recorded thing I've ever been on. I'm really proud of the tones we got, and I just pushed harder. I have one song where I don't use it. It's still kind of a really wacky, heavy song, but I don't use a pick at all. It's all finger picked, and
holy shit,
I spend a lot of time on my guitar solos, like a lot. I mean, I always do, but like I labored over a few of them, like, and had like 10 different versions of them, and like I really like I made sure that there was nothing on there that I was going to regret, which maybe I won't agree with in a year from now, but like I definitely like didn't. I was very proactive on making sure that like my parts were always getting better. So yeah, I think like the what I achieved with the guitar, like I have to go back and like some of the songs that we haven't been playing live, like I'm in the process of like kind of like perfecting what I recorded, you know what I mean? Because I kept changing them up until like the final product. So I'm really proud of the work that went into the guitar parts.
So what's kind of the general plan with the album? You know, you mentioned you were gonna start releasing like documentary episodes. I really love when bands do that. It gives like a nice insight behind everything that's going on that most people don't see. What else do you guys have along with that?
Yeah, we have just like we're gonna start rolling out like content like come January. We'll release a song and you know, play through videos and then and visualizer videos and lyric videos, all that stuff, just to hype up the record. We have a music video shot that's really awesome that we're really proud of. It's very funny and just kind of silly and fits the vibe of the song really well. And then yeah, we kind of we're building a team again. You know, we need a new booking agent, and really just the plan is just a tour. You know, I think the record will come out in March, and if by then we don't have like a new agent, then I'll just go back to the old school and just DIY until we get one. You know, but we're definitely like ready to hit the road. You know, we've been ready for a long time to get back out, but we just had nothing new. At a certain point, like you can't keep trying to sell a 2-year-old record, you know, because everybody that knows about it, and they've come out and seen you 2 times already. You know, you need something new to get people excited again. So now that we have it, it's like we just got to get back out there. It's like life becomes simple again. Okay, it's out. You know, go sell it. Go play shows. You know, go get people to give a shit about it again. So you know, whatever it takes to just kind of get around the country again. I mean, we did the full U.S. I think 3 times on the last record. Like, I'd like to do it more than that, and I'd like to get over to Europe. You know, those are our goals for next year.
It's not some bad goals to have. And I think too, man, like it seems like for a while there were just too many tours going on, so you had to like really pick and choose which shows to go to. And it seems like over the past couple of years things have gotten a lot more streamlined, and there's only a minimal amount of tours going on, and things don't really cross over anymore. So you have that chance to go see like all these bands and all these shows without having to choose between like 2 or 3 different ones going on at the same time. And I think that helps the scene a lot more now as opposed to being like flooded, you know, like even 5 years ago it was still pretty bad.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that just comes with the time in the music industry and how you make money. You know, everybody just wants to tour. Yeah. And that's been the hard thing, is like everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants to tour, so everybody wants a booking agent, and everybody wants the same guys that do all like the really bigger, better tours that you want, you know. So it is what it is, you know. But with Moontooth, like we just keep going. You know, that's always been the thing. It's like things get good and then they get shitty and then they get good and then they get better and then they get really shitty. But we just keep like moving, you know. That's so whatever happens or whoever works with us, we'll just be out there playing shows and trying to convert people.
Nice. Well, Nick, I have to say, man, this is probably been one of my favorite episodes I've done in quite a while. This was like so much information and like tons of cool shit to find out, you know, not just about the band, but about you and the new record. You hit the nail on the head for me.
Cool, man. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. And, you know, you came around at the perfect time. We're going to start trying to do, you know, more interviews and podcasts and stuff. So you technically got the first one about the new record. So.
Nice. Yeah, I never know when I kind of do this stuff.
Where are you located anyway?
I'm in Tennessee right now. I used to live on the West Coast in California for quite a while, and then I moved to Washington for a year, and then I just decided to move back here because my friends are here, my family's here, so just kind of needed a change of pace.
What part of Tennessee?
It's Chattanooga, so it's like 2 hours away from Atlanta and 2 hours away from Nashville. Nice little center spot there.
Nice.
Yeah, it's not bad. We get a lot of good stuff that comes through here.
Yeah, we've never played there. We played Nashville and Knoxville.
Yeah, Knoxville's weird, man. They keep like shutting down every venue that gets put in there. And same thing here where I'm at,
Really?
like in Chattanooga. Every time a venue pops up, it just gets shut down because the city only wants like certain kinds of bands playing. It's really fucking weird. I don't get it at all.
Yeah, I mean, Long Island, where I'm from, there's just not a lot of venues. It's crazy. There's so many bands, and there's only like 2 venues that they can kind of play at regularly, and then there's there's some bars, like some dive bars, and then there's like the one pay to play venue, but it's like few and far between, especially compared to how many bands there are, because there's like an insane amount of bands and an insane amount of really good fucking bands too, like really talented bands, but there's just very few venues. I guess it's a big risk, but
yeah, that's true. I think the only venues I've been to in New York were St. Vitus. What's the really big one in the city?
Terminal 5.
Yeah, I've been to that one, and then there's another one too. I'm blanking on the name. But yeah, it's like those 3 venues pretty much, and like a couple smaller ones.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, that's Brooklyn. I mean, Brooklyn and Manhattan.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Like that's. But Brooklyn actually, like, they've changed over venues a lot. Like, it used to be, I used to like do all the booking for the band, and an old big part of that was trading shows with other bands, from other cities. And it used to be when bands would hit me up, even if I couldn't book them a show, I could at least give them like a long list of venues. But even in the last like few years, like half of even more of the venues I had on that list are done. So
damn.
I think it's just like Trash Bar, Grand Victory, the Acheron, all these like places for like, especially Trash Bar was like a perfect place to start. Like, okay, you're a new band, you get your first show, like they'll book you. You know what I mean? And that now it's like I have no idea where to even tell you to go. But I mean, they pop up all the time. It's just. But for us, like Vitus has become like our home in Brooklyn. That's our favorite place to play in general. It's just a great vibe there.
That is a pretty rad venue, man. I was stoked to go there because I was there back in December to see those final Dillinger shows, and we just made like a week of going to like all these crazy shows in the city, and also when I was touring around.
That week was when we were in Virginia at Mark's doing the record.
Oh,
I remember
wow.
that because we all wanted to go to that, but it was like, okay, I guess we're not going because we're going to go do pre-pro on the record.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah, that was the same week. But yeah, we got to open for Dillinger at Vitus once. That was fucking crazy.
Jesus, man, that would have been a hell of a energetic show, that's for sure, especially in that small room.
Yeah, it was intense. I've seen them a few times, and then that was probably the most intense. And Ben was hanging from his knees on a pipe, like above the stage, just hanging upside down, playing half the song, and just being pummeled by human bodies, the whole time. It's great. I'm sure the last shows were much more intense, though. I would imagine, anyway.
Yeah, they were literally insane. I mean, not worth talking about again here because it's like a year ago now. But yeah, they were. I haven't been able to listen to them since seeing those shows because it was just like, well, that was it. It sounded so good, I can't even listen to it on record anymore.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's how you hoped you'd go out, Is that
true.
Like, you give people what they want, instead of like, I mean, of all the ways that bands break up or like throw in the towel or they'll put out like 2 or 3 like albums that nobody likes first,
Yep.
It's at least you can go out on top, and they're really doing it right. So that's always like, honestly, that's the best thing you can do for your band. Is break up.
Yeah, I think so too. It's kind of weird when you get those bands that are just like 1 original member, 2 original members, but it's not like, no offense to the members, but like important members, so to speak. There, it's just like, yeah. At what point do you stop calling yourself Black Sabbath? When it's just Tony Iommi left. It's kind of a weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's up to the fans to decide, I guess.
True.
Whether they support it or not. Even Riot gets backlash for that because we have had so many members, but that band's always had so many members. So it's always been like a mix of different people. But when our original guitar player, the original guitar player of the original guitar player of Riot, Mark Reale, died in 2011. That was like a huge that was a huge blow. You know, that he was the original. You know, but like the other guitar player, Mike, was my teacher. He's been in the band for 30 years straight. You know, Donnie, the bass player, has been in the band since '85. He was on like some of the most important records. But you know, but still, it's like there are people that are like, well, they don't like that. I don't give a shit about that lineup. They like the previous lineup, so this one's not true. You know what I mean? So it's really up to the fans. It's up to them to decide. I'm going to support this or I'm not going to support this. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes
sense. But sometimes
it
is good to go out on top. Like Dillinger didn't have to go through that and have different members and get in fights and all that stuff and break up in like this ugly way. At least they can. Weren't they on Rolling Stone and shit? Like they got to go out like on top. You know, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was a bummer, and also I don't know if you could physically do that for the rest of your life.
No, there's no way. Honestly, man, so the craziest thing I saw at that show was Greg jumped off the second floor balcony in Terminal 5, just straight into the crowd.
Yeah, I saw the videos.
Yeah, I was like, what? Oh, man. Well, Nick, man, we've gone on for 2 hours here. Thank you so much for doing this.
I hope you can edit this down to what people want to listen to.
You know, I think the listeners that I have don't really mind longer podcasts, especially when it's like a bunch of like really kind of good conversation like this. So, I mean, I'll probably cut some down, but we'll see. So the album is called Crux. It'll be out sometime next year, correct?
Should be March, yeah.
Awesome. And then to start looking for stuff in December, right?
Yeah, well, the documentary will be out by then, at least the first part of it, and then the first song will probably be more like January.
Okay.
But the documentary will have enough of like some new parts where it'll give you some teaser, like some hints at what to expect.
Nice. Yeah, I love that stuff, man. I love when bands do that. That's like my favorite thing to watch. Do you want people to follow you on social media? I don't know how people feel about that. It's kind of a
no. Get them away. No, yeah, I mean, yeah, we're on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff.
Okay.
Twitter. Please look us up. I'm just joking, yeah. Yeah, follow us, so you can get hear the new shit first. And, yeah, we're easy to find.
Awesome. Yeah, I usually link to everything in our website so people can find you guys. And always when I post stuff on social media.
Thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you for taking the time.
Be excellent to each other and